Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I trust the weekend was great. Certainly, Nairobi had been so quiet and so pleasant you could get anywhere in about 2 minutes. But certainly busier this morning. I'd like to thank Sami Zedan of Al Jazeera for inviting me to participate in a discussion about whether land reform can be a success, referencing Zimbabwe. It was a very interesting and lively conversation. Derek Matsiak, senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies in Pretoria, myself, and Joseph Ochieno, a commentator on African affairs and a columnist for New Africa magazine. That link is the first link on Rich Wrap-Ups. Let's move on to Sub-Saharan Africa. Preliminary data indicates Sub-Saharan African GDP growth of 2.7% in 2018, better than the 2.3% recorded in 2017. My piece over the weekend was why the DR Congo delayed election results. I started by quoting Joseph Stalin. It's not the people who vote that count, it's the people who count the votes. The DR Congo held a long delayed election in December. Joseph Kabila Kabange, who besides sporting a whole new sartorial look of late, has been president of the DR Congo since January 2001. And took office after the assassination of his father, President Laurent Désiré Kabila. Previously very cryptic and not prone to engaging with the press, Kabila, having anointed his preferred successor, Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari, was kicking back and relaxing and giving exclusive interviews to all the world's press, and in one interview alluded to Arnold Schwarzenegger's famous quote, "I'll be back." In fact, one report I read said he was proposing to remain in the presidential palace and that his Dauphin Shadari would occupy the residence of the Prime Minister. I myself have visited the president's residence, and on those premises, well, on the ground, sits a screen broken and frozen from the era of President Joseph Désiré Mobutu, aka Mobutu Sese Seko Kuku Bendu Wazabanga. And that screen was headlined the Marche de Valeur, which I was asked to rehabilitate and reinvigorate. I was a little bit slow on the draw and did not appreciate the Dan Gertler style of operation, which required phoning up cash up front. I had a plan to turn the defunct Marche de Valeur into a Bovespa, which, by the way, is the only stock market in the world which is posting record highs. The Congo is enormously rich, but since the days of King Leopold, through Mobutu, through the Kabilas, has been a country where l'état c'est moi applies, and its citizens have had to exist in a world which Joseph Conrad aptly pronounced as the horror in his book, The Heart of Darkness. V.S. Naipaul, in his book A Bend in the River, whose departure point was Conrad's Heart of Darkness, wrote, "It isn't that there's no right and wrong here. There's no right." Today, the Congo is once again key to the global economy in the 21st century. Once it was about rubber, and today it's all about cobalt, copper, and lithium. Eric Prince, who is raising a $500 million fund to invest in the supply of these metals, said to the Financial Times, "For all the talk of our virtual world, the innovation, you can't build those vehicles without minerals that come from generally weird, hard to access places. When I see the R&D budgets of all the major automakers plowing huge money into hybrid or electric vehicles, I believe the demand curve for the unique minerals that make up an electric car and battery technology will be enormously high over the coming years. Returning to the elections whose results release has now been delayed, according to Africa Confidential and others, the Catholic Church, certainly the most trusted institution in the Congo and seriously ubiquitous, all indications are that the opposition led by Martin Fayulu has won this all ends up. Early results, which the regime is banning the media from reporting, indicate a win for the opposition after government plans to fix the poll went awry, said Africa Confidential. AC added the Bishops' Conférence Episcopale Nationale du Congo had organized up to 40,000 election monitors to scrutinize the conduct of the poll and conduct a parallel vote tabulation. Senko did not name the winning candidate publicly, but declared that he had polled over half the votes in the presidential election. Martin Fayulu is the unnamed winning opposition candidate. AC's church sources say rival opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi and the ruling opposition candidate Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari are trading with around 20% each, we hear. All these figures and the detailed calculations underlying them were provided by Senko to diplomats in Kinshasa on January the 2nd. But the fix was not thorough enough, sources in Shadari's Front Commun pour le Congo told Africa Confidential. They said control of the poll was lost because they did not pay off enough election officials. If President Kabila's man is at only 20%, with the entire state machinery at his beck and call, then we are talking about single digits in reality. Therefore, we are actually talking about a compelling victory for Martin Fayulu, an open and shut case, as it were. The president's advisor, Barnabe Kikaya bin Karubi, pronounced that the coalition firmly deplores the partisan, irresponsible, and anarchic attitude of Senko. President Kabila summoned the Catholic bishops to Kinshasa and told them he wants to lead a unified and peaceful Congo. DR Congo's Electoral Commission have said they can't publish the results on Sunday as planned to avoid political unrest, and that the result will be revealed next week after accusing the country's Catholic Church on Friday of preparing an insurrection by saying it knows the winner. The author Jason Stearns, dancing in the glory of monsters, tweeted, "This could unfold in many ways. I find it very hard to believe that Kabila and Shadari will accept defeat and step down. I also don't think they will be able to rig elections and move on, as we know now that the Catholic Church, opposition, and civil society will put up a fight. The most likely scenario is a protracted, potentially violent standoff that plays out over months in halls of power and in the streets. It could spill over into armed mobilization in eastern DRC. Many civilians are likely to be killed in this scenario. If President Kabila is determined to install his preferred successor and the AU, which has only once pronounced against an election, that was in 2008 in Zimbabwe, or SADC, or its neighbors are not prepared to enforce the will of the people, then I would argue that the US, which has already positioned 80 personnel in the capital of Gabon, to be in a position to support the security of US citizens, personnel, and diplomatic facilities in Congo's capital, should remove President Kabila from the Congo and install the rightful winner at the request of Senko. I am not a believer in regime change, and in fact President Assad is the first leader to have managed to repel the merchants of regime change. The point about Syria is that the head choppers did not represent the will of the people. But this is a clear-cut case where the will of the people is being subverted. It's egregious, it's outrageous. And the US has a national interest, economic, as alluded to above. Listen to the Eric Prince comments. The intervention fits neatly with Ambassador John Bolton's New Africa strategy. And unlike Iraq, where Dick Cheney said we will be greeted as liberators, they will throw rose petals at our feet, I can guarantee you the people of the Congo will throw rose petals at the feet. 750 billion of a defense budget can be put to good use here. If Trump and his team from Bolton through to Pompeo want to regain influence on this vast continent, this is that moment, just like it was for Muhammad Ali many years ago in Kinshasa. This is a picture of the Marche de Valeur that I took in 2010. This is a link to When We Were Kings, that fantastic fight Muhammad Ali won against George Foreman. Minor T playing on the Joseph Stalin point. Always remember, in most African democracies, it's the announcing, not the counting, that matters. I tweeted, if the result is an open and shut case and Martin Fayulu is the clear-cut winner, why not just intervene and install the correct president at the request of Senko? I said real leadership, in my opinion, in DR Congo at this moment would be for the US to step up. In a place like here where people are deeply skeptical of political elites, Martin Fayulu built his credibility from the street up, says Tom Perriello. And I was responding to Ian Cox, who says that Trump is not keen on intervention. But I said enough is enough. If the incumbent is at 20% with all the advantages of state machinery, then they're in fact at 0 or thereabouts, like less than 10. The church, the report that I was referring to by Africa Confidential, that link is on the website. All these figures and the detailed calculations underlying them were provided by Senko to diplomats in Kinshasa on January the 2nd. Peter Pham said there is an old dictum that posits that the voice of the people is the voice of God. Here, rather, we have a case where the Vox Dei points the way to the true Vox Populi. That was in a comment to the Financial Times. This is a photograph of Kabila meeting with powerful Catholic Church bishops in Kinshasa, telling them he wants to leave a united and peaceful Congo. The coalition firmly deplores the partisan, irresponsible and anarchic attitude of Senko, that's Bin Karubi. Jason Stearns, we've already quoted his tweets. Most likely scenario is a protracted, potentially violent standoff that plays out over months in halls of power and in the streets. It could spill over into armed mobilization in eastern DRC, he says. Kobo 3, who's a witty and a wag and a deep thinker, from his look with fancy glasses, bright blue suit, etc., it seems DR President Congo Joseph Kabila is planning a move into music or the movies when and if he leaves. What is happening in Sudan is a revolution, said Amjad Farid, spokesman for Sudan Change Now. The Sudanese people are in the streets because they have nothing to lose, which is always the most dangerous moment for a regime. Bashir seized power in a military coup in 1989. The economy has been starved of foreign currency. The value of the pound has plummeted by 85% against the dollar last year. Inflation is at almost 70%. 37 protesters shot dead by security forces in the first 5 days of protests. Bashir has faced down protests before, but what's clear is that the economy has reached a tipping point, and the masses, including many within areas previously regarded as regime strongholds, have been pushed to the edge, says Murithi Mutiga, who covers the Horn of Africa at ICG. And it's really a horrendous situation. The regime desperately needs a bailout, they need debt forgiveness, they need real structural reforms to the economy, but it's very difficult for that to happen whilst Bashir is at the helm. This is the response by Delta Corp, who were initially saying that they were only going to take dollars for their product, but now seem to have changed their mind and scrapped hard currency payment plan after government opposition. Zero Hedge tweeted, "This is how you peacefully colonize an entire continent." Uganda's public debt rises by 22%, according to the Auditor General's report. But the issue here, the revenue to GDP is actually standing at 55%. But the issue is the amount of revenue that's having to go towards debt repayments. And that issue is one that's important for many countries at the moment. South African all shares down 1.01% year to date. Dollar rand below 14 at 13.94. Egyptian pound at 17.87. Sub-Saharan Africa, Citon have put out a report. The biggest currency decliner was the Zambian kwacha, which registered a 19% depreciation last year. Debt is projected to have hit 69% of GDP. The Kenya shilling was the only currency in Africa to appreciate against the dollar, 1.4%. Naira minus 0.7%, the kwacha minus 1.6%. Uganda shilling minus 1.8, Mauritius rupee minus 2.2, Tanzania shilling minus 2.9, Ghana cedi minus 8.6. Botswana pula minus 9%, South African rand minus 15.9%, and the kwacha last at minus 19%. Nigerian all shares down 2.52% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange is minus 0.41% this year. Very witty article in Bloomberg Opinion, "Don't call bribes chickens," referring to the Mozambique scenario. Have a read, well worth it. Scroll down a bit further. Looking at growth, Rwanda is going to grow 7.7% last year, Uganda 6.8%, Kenya 6%. This is all driven by good rains. Eurobond comparisons, Senegal, Kenya and Zambia. This is from Citon. Equity markets plot twist. Malawi was the top performing African market, up 33.6%. Everything else was negative. The Kenyan economy has expanded by 6% for the first 3 quarters of 2018, compared to 4.7% in a similar period in 2017. The agricultural sector underpinned that, recorded a growth of 5.3% due to improved weather conditions. I've said it before, I'll say it again, a sub-Saharan African economist has also got to be an accomplished meteorologist, because rains have an outsized effect on GDP and well-being. Good rates have underpinned GDP in this part of Africa and propped it. China and Kenya have denied reports that a key port in Mombasa was at risk of being seized by Beijing over unpaid debts. The Chinese government themselves say this is nonsense, President Kenyatta said, while the Auditor General's office denied publishing any such letter, copies of which circulated widely online. In December 2017, Beijing acquired a 99-year lease to the port, this is the Hambantota port, in return for giving some of the billions of dollars Sri Lanka owed China. Let me leave you with this quote from Bloomberg analyst Nisid Hajari, who says, as the country enters 2019, the plan is looking shakier than ever and appears in need of a rethink. This plan to project Chinese power, influence and trade across much of the world could undermine all three. Take you back to June 2018 when I said the first overarching point is that creditors are not Santa Claus and miscues will exact a very heavy price. Countries will be hambantoted. Jane D. Casaro, a respected Business Daily columnist, says the national consensus in Kenya about Chinese loans being a necessary evil to build badly needed infrastructure is crumbling. In an interview with RFI, have a listen. There are fantastic outcome. World's 20 most dynamic cities, 19 in Asia. Only one city outside of Asia Pacific, Nairobi, ranks in the top 20. That's good to know. Digital betting surpassed P2P transfers to become the second most occurring transaction among young Kenyans, second only to airtime purchases. This is a chart of Kenya's 2018 Eurobonds. The 10-year Eurobond is at 8.9%, 30-year at 9.7%. I like the 30-year maturity pretty much across the continent. You're getting paid handsomely, and in 30 years' time we'll have fixed all our problems. The Kenya shilling gained 1.4% against the dollar, only currency in Africa to appreciate against the dollar. Diaspora remittances increased by 42.5%. This is one of the things underpinning the shilling. For the first 10 months of 2018, from 1.6 billion to 2.2 billion. Then NSE was on a downward trend last year. The all share fell a total of 18%. Banks, however, interestingly, recorded a 16.2% increase in their core EPS through Q3 2018, but share prices have fallen. Nairobi all shares down 2.42% year to date, trading at a PE ratio of 10.7 and a dividend yield of 5.2. Thank you for stopping by.